morning. Today we have the privilege of having in Panama Senator Feargal Quinn from Ireland. Everybody knows the success story of Ireland, how Ireland has become what is known today as the Celtic Tiger. Important changes in the economy, important changes in the legislation. And Senator Quinn has been an important person during this process because, as we have seen in Latin America, a lot of people have good ideas. But the problem is not the ideas, it's the ability to implement them successfully and to get everybody around and galvanize the forces, the political forces around them. And Senator Quinn has had a lot of experience, and we really appreciate him visiting Panama now.
Thank
Senator,
you.
good morning.
Roberto, thank you very much indeed, but you are too generous altogether. I love to come to Panama, and I have enjoyed the few days I've been here, but I wouldn't attempt to do other than perhaps just tell my story. And if I have one criticism of Panama, I have the feeling that there are not enough business people running the country. And one of my ambitions is in Ireland is to make sure that there are more people with an experience of management running the country. So one of my, I suppose, aims would be to encourage business people to get into government, to run for election, and to see can they manage to achieve what they achieve in business, can they achieve it in government. Maybe you're doing this already.
Well, it's never enough of that. Senator, how was Ireland 30 years ago? How it looked like?
Ireland 30 years ago, Ireland 20 years ago. Let me tell you that my daughter, we have 5 children, my elder daughter left university in 1987. There were 38 people in her class. The following day, 37 of them emigrated. They left Ireland. There was only one of them, and it was not my daughter. She emigrated to France. There were no jobs. We had the worst economy in Europe. We had the highest unemployment, and we had the most emigration. People left Ireland for many, many years. And it was at the very bottom of the scale of Europe. So that's the sort of Ireland that we had. We depended, to a very large extent in the past, 30 years ago, we depended on protecting ourselves with big tariffs around us. That was when we got our independence in 1922. We thought that was the way to make jobs, to protect ourselves. What happened in the 1960s was that we changed, and we said we are going to take down these barriers, and we are going to try and become a creator of wealth rather than a protector of wealth.
And what did you do in order to become generators of wealth rather than protectors of wealth?
It was very interesting because it took a long time. We needed patience to a certain extent because I suppose of the factors that changed Ireland, the most important one was education. We continued in the 1960s and the 1970s, we continued to invest in education. That was probably the most important factor. The second factor was that we said if we are going to be attractive to outside investors, we have to bring down our tax. And so we reduced many taxes. And why I joke about grocers should run countries is because there is a difference between accountants and grocers. Grocers have learned that sometimes a lower percentage brings you in more money. And we were able to convince the ministers of finance in the 1980s and 90s said, we understand that. And so every time we brought down the tax rate, the income came up. And that was magic. But that happens in a grocery store. The store that brings down its prices in percentage terms sometimes takes in a lot more money. So every time we reduced the tax rate, we took in more money. And it's been a very important element on that basis. The third element, I think it's fair to say, was that we were fortunate enough at that stage to have made a decision to join the common market of Europe. And that was where the barriers in all of Europe, 300 or 400 million people, now almost 500 million people, all with no tariff barriers. So we suddenly had a much bigger market than we'd had before. They were those 3 elements. The fourth element, which is probably the most, a very important one as well, was we decided to identify what I call the sunshine industries and businesses. They are the new ones, not the traditional old ones that we had always handled before. These were technology, high tech. These were pharmaceuticals and financial services. And these were the new industries. And so that meant we became very attractive to the Americans and others who wished to invest in a market of 400 or 500 million people. And they said, here is a highly educated, low tax economy, let's invest there. So many of those companies, when they looked at Europe, they came to Ireland.
So it was a matter of doing internal reforms and taking advantage of what was happening around you with the European market opening.
Yes, but you see, we had done all of those things in the 60s and 70s, and it still hadn't worked. What happened in 1980s, in 1987 really, was we got frightened. It wasn't patience, it was we became scared. Because suddenly our economy had been so bad because one government, particularly in the 1970s, had tried to get more money by increasing taxes. And because of that, the economy was going down, and our employment was going up, our emigration was going up, our balance of payments was worse, and our national debt was disastrous. And what happened in 1987 was the different sectors of the community suddenly got worried. They got frightened. The trade unions got frightened, the employers got frightened, the farmers got frightened, and the government managed to coax a table like this with four sides to get together and make a deal. And the big deal that was made was that the government said to the unions, look, will you accept a lower increase than inflation if you measure what comes to your pocket rather than what the employer pays you? Because we will reduce the tax that you pay so that you will actually end up with more money in your pocket, but it doesn't come from the employer, it comes from the net income that you get. And that was magic, because for the first time a sensible syndicate trade union said to its members, this is a good deal, you will do well out of this, even though the employer is not giving you an increase equal to inflation, the money you get into your pocket will be equal to that, will be ahead of that. And on that basis, the deal was made. Now, they also had to convince the farmers that this was a good deal. But when the four sides got together and it worked, they made a 3-year agreement, and then another 3-year agreement, and then another 3-year agreement, and we're now into the next phase now.